He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Welcome to the NCE Study Guide. I created this study guide using ChatGPT and Notebook LM. So think of these modules as AI-powered audio flashcards. Each one of these 20 modules contains 10 mock questions, representing the kind of questions that you might encounter on the National Counseling exam. I created this primarily for myself, and I decided to make these available to anyone else who might benefit from this kind of study aid. But please note, while I have done my best to ensure that these modules align with NCE content, I encourage you to cross-reference them with trusted study guides and resources for the most accurate preparation. These modules are not affiliated with or endorsed by the NBCC or any official licensing board. So, with no further ado, here are your AI study buddies from Notebook LM. Enjoy.
All right, welcome back for Module 2 of our NCE Deep Dive.
Module 2, yeah.
Yeah, and remember, these are the modules that are curated by AI with Notebook LM.
That's right.
Using tons of NCE practice questions.
Yes.
So we're really honing in on what you need to know to pass that exam.
Exactly.
And today we're talking about key counseling concepts and theories.
Yeah, it's all about laying the foundation.
The foundation, all right.
Really having that strong base of understanding these core concepts.
Okay.
That'll just make approaching those NCE questions so much easier.
So it's like building blocks, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's just jump right into question number 11.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Bring it on.
All right, here we go. So this is verbatim from the practice exam. Which defense mechanism involves attributing one's unacceptable thoughts or feelings to someone else?
Okay.
And the options are denial, projection, sublimation, regression.
Okay.
So let's start with denial.
Yeah, denial is essentially refusing to acknowledge reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like that reality is just too difficult to face. Right.
So like, you can think of someone who maybe has a substance use issue,
Right. Okay.
but completely insists that they don't.
Right. Even though.
Yeah, even though maybe their family's saying, hey, like we're really worried or whatever.
Yeah, or there's like actual evidence.
Exactly, but they're just like, nope, not me, la la la, you know?
Total. Okay, so that's denial.
Yeah.
What about projection?
So projection kind of takes it a step further.
Okay.
It's not just like refusing to acknowledge it, but it's saying like, oh no, it's not me, it's you.
Oh.
So it's attributing those unacceptable thoughts or feelings to someone else.
Okay.
So, for instance, if someone is really insecure about, let's say, their intelligence,
Right.
they might constantly be accusing other people of being stupid.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it's like, it's not that they're stupid, they're projecting that insecurity onto other people.
Gotcha.
So it's easier to deal with in a way.
Okay, so that's projection.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and option C is sublimation.
Yeah. So sublimation, this one's a little different.
Okay. It's considered a healthier defense mechanism,
Okay.
and it's channeling those unacceptable impulses or emotions into something that is acceptable.
Okay.
So, for example, someone who maybe struggles with managing their anger,
Okay.
they might take up kickboxing.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So they're channeling that aggression into something that's productive
Right.
and physical and,
Right.
yeah, another example could be like channeling those feelings into art.
Okay.
Right. So it's finding a way to express those things in a way that is healthy and acceptable.
Yeah. So it's like finding that healthy outlet.
Exactly. Yep.
So our last option for this one is regression.
Yeah. So regression is basically going back to childlike behaviors
Okay.
as a way of coping.
Okay.
So when someone's stressed or anxious, they might revert back to these things that they did when they were a kid.
Oh, okay.
So like throwing a temper tantrum as an adult if they don't get their way.
Yeah.
Or like clinging to, a childhood stuffed animal or blanket or something like that during a time of stress.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of going back to what worked before
Yeah.
when you were little.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to recap, the question was, which defense mechanism involves attributing one's unacceptable thoughts or feelings to someone else?
Right.
What do you think?
That would be projection.
Projection, that's right.
Yep. Like we were talking about with that intelligence example.
So exactly.
We're saying, oh, it's not my issue, it's their issue.
Right.
It's their fault that I'm feeling this way, basically.
Okay, cool. So that was a good one.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to number 12.
Okay.
All right, number 12 says, what is the primary focus of Gestalt therapy? Okay, and the options are past unresolved conflicts, unconscious processes, the here and now experience, cognitive restructuring.
Okay.
All right, so let's start with past unresolved conflicts.
Yeah, so when I hear that, I automatically think of psychoanalysis,
Yeah.
right? So like Freud and the whole emphasis on
Yeah.
how childhood experiences impact us. Right, yeah.
And these unresolved conflicts from our past are shaping our present, right?
Right.
So it's all about uncovering those hidden patterns.
Okay, so that's definitely like a key part of psychoanalysis.
Absolutely.
Okay, now what about unconscious processes?
So that also really aligns with that psychoanalytic theory,
Okay.
right? Because the idea is that so much of what's driving us is outside of our awareness,
Right.
right? So these unconscious processes are influencing our behaviors, our relationships,
Yeah.
all sorts of things, and we're not even aware of it.
Right, so it's like this whole hidden world that's operating
Totally, yeah.
underneath the surface.
Yeah, it could be kind of spooky.
It is a little bit.
Right.
Definitely.
But interesting, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so option C is the here and now experience.
Yeah, that one's a big one for Gestalt therapy,
Okay.
right? So unlike psychoanalysis, which is focused on the past, Gestalt therapy is all about present moment awareness.
Okay.
It's like, what are you experiencing right now?
All right. What's going on in your body? What are your thoughts?
Gotcha.
What are your feelings?
So it's very much like focused on the present.
Yeah, and accepting it without judgment.
Okay.
Right, so just noticing what is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So very different from psychoanalysis in that way.
Very much so, yeah.
Okay. And then our last option here is cognitive restructuring.
So that is a key technique in cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay. CBT.
Yep, CBT.
Yeah.
And it's all about identifying and challenging those unhelpful thinking patterns,
Right.
right? So like those negative thoughts that are contributing to our distress or our problems.
Okay.
It's about learning to reframe those thoughts
Okay.
into something more balanced and realistic.
Right. So that you can kind of like take control
Exactly, yeah.
of those thoughts and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So to recap, question 12 is asking, what is the primary focus of Gestalt therapy?
Right.
What do you think?
So the answer there is the here and now experience.
Yeah, that's right.
Really all about present moment awareness.
Okay. So present over past.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Now this one's going to get a little more complex.
Okay.
So question 13 is all about family systems theory.
Okay.
And it asks, in family systems theory, what term describes the process by which a child is drawn into the conflict between parents?
Ooh, interesting.
And the options are differentiation, triangulation, enmeshment, boundaries.
Okay, all right.
So let's start with differentiation.
Yeah, so differentiation is basically the ability to be an individual within a family system.
Okay.
Right. So it's like being able to have your own thoughts and feelings and values, even if they differ from your family's,
Okay.
but still being connected to your family.
Right. Yeah.
So it's finding that balance between being your own person
Right.
and being part of a family unit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what about triangulation?
So triangulation is when a third person gets pulled into the conflict between two others.
Okay.
And often this is a child. Right. So you've got the two parents who are in conflict,
Right.
and then they bring the child in
Okay.
instead of dealing with each other directly.
Yeah, so it's almost like they're trying to use the child as like a buffer.
Yeah. Or like maybe a messenger.
Right.
Right. Or to get their needs met through the child.
Or like,
Yeah.
like almost ganging up.
Yeah. Or to take sides.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's triangulation.
Right. And it can be really damaging for the child.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. What about enmeshment?
So enmeshment is when the boundaries in a family are really blurry,
Okay.
right? So there's a lack of emotional separation
Okay.
between the members.
Okay.
It's like everyone's so intertwined that you can't really tell where one person ends
Right.
and the other one begins.
Okay, so it's like there's no sense of individuality.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And it can be really hard to develop a healthy sense of self
Gotcha.
when you're in that kind of enmeshed family system.
Okay, and then the last one here is boundaries.
Yeah. So boundaries are those limits that we set in relationships,
Yeah.
right? So it's defining what's okay, what's not okay.
Okay.
What are my responsibilities? What are your responsibilities?
Okay.
And healthy boundaries are really important for any relationship,
Right.
but especially in families because
Okay.
they help create a sense of respect
Right.
and safety and autonomy for each individual.
Okay, so to be crystal clear, question 13 asks, in family systems theory, what term describes the process by which a child is drawn into the conflict between parents?
Right.
So of those four options, which one is it?
So that would be triangulation.
Triangulation, yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, super damaging.
Yeah. Definitely not a healthy dynamic.
Yeah. Okay, all right, let's move on to question number 14.
Okay.
This one's all about neurotransmitters.
Ooh.
So it says, which neurotransmitter is most closely associated with mood regulation and is commonly linked to depression?
Right.
And the options are dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA. So let's start with dopamine.
Yeah, so dopamine is often called the reward neurotransmitter.
Okay.
It's all about pleasure, motivation.
Right.
When you achieve a goal, dopamine's released.
Okay.
So you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep doing that thing.
Well, it's kind of like our internal motivation system.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what about serotonin?
So serotonin is often referred to as the mood stabilizer.
Okay.
It's involved in regulating our emotions, our sleep,
Right.
our appetite.
So it keeps us level.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
When serotonin's balanced, we feel calmer, more emotionally stable,
Gotcha.
less reactive to stress.
Okay, and then we've got acetylcholine.
So acetylcholine is really important for memory,
Right.
learning, muscle function.
Okay.
So it's helping to transmit those signals between our nerve cells and our muscles
Okay.
so that we can move and think and remember things.
It's like the messenger.
Yeah, the communication network of the brain and body.
Okay, and then our last one here is GABA.
So GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. And basically that means it slows things down in the brain. So it's like the brakes.
Okay.
It reduces anxiety. It helps us to relax and chill out.
So it's like the opposite of dopamine.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So to recap, question 14. Which neurotransmitter is most closely associated with mood regulation and is commonly linked to depression?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
So that would be serotonin.
Serotonin. Okay.
Yep. And that's why a lot of antidepressant medications target serotonin,
Right.
because when those levels are low,
Yeah.
people tend to experience those symptoms of depression.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's move on to number 15.
All right.
Question 15 is all about counseling techniques.
Okay.
And it asks, which counseling technique involves repeating back what the client has said in a way that reflects both content and emotions? And the options are confrontation, reflective listening, summarization, paraphrasing.
Right.
So what about confrontation?
So confrontation, it can be a helpful technique,
Okay.
but it's about gently challenging the client,
Okay.
maybe on inconsistencies or discrepancies in what they're saying.
Right.
So it's not about being like harsh or judgmental,
Right.
but just like, hey, I'm noticing that you're saying this, but you're doing that.
Right.
Can we explore that a little bit?
Okay, so it's kind of like calling them out?
Yeah, but in a gentle and supportive way,
Right, yeah.
with the goal of helping them gain awareness.
Right, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then what about reflective listening?
So reflective listening is really about deeply understanding the client's experience. So it's not just hearing the words that they're saying,
Okay.
but it's also picking up on the emotions
Right.
that are underneath those words
Okay.
and reflecting that back to them.
So it's like showing them that you really get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about empathy and validation.
Okay, and then what about summarization?
Yeah, so summarization is really helpful, especially when you've been talking for a while
Right.
and maybe the client has shared a lot.
Yeah.
It's a way to just pull together the key points.
Okay.
Make sure that you're understanding everything correctly.
Right.
And give the client a sense of like, okay, this is where we're at.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last option is paraphrasing.
So paraphrasing is similar to summarization,
Oh.
but it's more focused on the content.
Okay.
So you're basically restating what the client has said,
Okay.
but in your own words,
Okay.
so that they know that you're listening
Right.
and that you're understanding what they're trying to say.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So just to recap, question 15.
Mm.
Which counseling technique involves repeating back what the client has said in a way that reflects both content and emotions?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
So that one would be reflective listening.
Reflective listening, that's right.
Yeah, because it's not just about the facts, it's about the feelings too.
Yeah, it's really about that empathy.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Let's move on to question 16.
Okay.
Okay, so this one is back to different therapy approaches.
Okay.
And it asks, what is the primary goal of behavior therapy?
All right.
And the choices are self-actualization, resolving unconscious conflicts, changing maladaptive behaviors, enhancing self-awareness.
Okay.
So let's start with self-actualization.
Yeah, so self-actualization, that's a big concept in humanistic psychology.
Okay.
And it's really about striving to fulfill your potential,
Okay.
becoming the best version of yourself,
Right.
living a life that's true to your values.
Okay. And would you say that that's like a key focus in behavior therapy?
Not so much.
Right.
Yeah, it's more of a focus in those humanistic approaches.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, what about resolving unconscious conflicts?
So that one's really central to psychoanalytic therapy,
Right.
Because like we talked about before, psychoanalytic theory is all about those unconscious conflicts from our past that are driving our behavior in the present. So the goal is to bring those conflicts to light so that we can work through them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about changing maladaptive behaviors?
So that one is really at the heart of behavior therapy.
Yeah.
It's all about identifying those specific behaviors that are causing problems and then figuring out how to change them.
Okay.
So it's less concerned with like the underlying reasons
Right.
and more focused on practical strategies for changing those behaviors.
So it's very action-oriented.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we have enhancing self-awareness.
So self-awareness is important in a lot of therapies,
Okay.
but it's not necessarily the primary goal of behavior therapy.
Okay.
Right? So while behavior therapy might help someone to become more self-aware,
Right.
it's not the main focus.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so question 16 asks, what is the primary goal of behavior therapy? What is it?
So the answer is changing maladaptive behaviors.
That's right.
It's really about helping people to develop new skills and coping mechanisms to manage those problematic behaviors.
Okay, cool. All right, let's move on to question 17.
Okay.
So this one is all about Piaget and cognitive development.
Right.
And it asks, according to Piaget, which stage of cognitive development is characterized by the ability to think abstractly and perform hypothetical reasoning? So the options are sensoromotor, preoperational, concrete operational, formal operational.
Okay.
All right, so let's start with sensoromotor.
Yeah, so this is the earliest stage.
Okay.
It lasts from birth to about age 2.
Okay.
And it's all about babies exploring the world through their senses and their movements.
So it's like that very basic level.
Yeah, like putting things in their mouths,
Right.
touching everything, shaking things, dropping things, just figuring out how the world works
Yeah.
through those sensory experiences.
Okay, cool. And then what about preoperational?
So the preoperational stage, that's roughly from ages 2 to 7. And during this stage, kids are starting to develop language.
Okay.
They're using symbols, they're playing pretend,
Right.
but their thinking is still pretty concrete and egocentric.
So they're not really able to see things from other people's perspectives yet.
Right, it's all about them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, and then concrete operational.
So concrete operational, this is from about ages 7 to 11.
Okay.
And in this stage, kids are starting to think more logically.
Okay.
They can solve problems.
Okay.
But they still need concrete examples to really understand things. So they're not quite there with the abstract thinking yet,
Right.
but they're getting closer.
Okay, and then lastly, formal operational.
So the formal operational stage starts around age 12,
Okay.
and it continues into adulthood.
Okay.
And this is where we finally see that abstract thought,
Okay.
the hypothetical reasoning,
Right.
the ability to consider multiple perspectives.
So that higher level thinking
Exactly.
really develops. Okay, cool. So just to be clear, question 17 asks, according to PJ, which stage of cognitive development is characterized by the ability to think abstractly and perform hypothetical reasoning? What's the answer?
So that would be the formal operational stage.
Formal operational, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, let's do a couple more.
Right.
Number 18.
Okay.
This one's all about ethical decision making.
Okay.
And it asks, what does the E stand for in the ethical decision making model known as IDEAL?
Right.
And the options are empathy, evaluate, ethics, explore.
Okay.
So can you just walk us through the IDEAL model?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what is it?
So the ideal model is basically a framework for ethical decision making.
Okay.
And it starts with I, which stands for identify.
Okay.
So the first step is to identify the problem.
Right.
What is the ethical issue that you're facing?
Okay, so figure out the problem.
Exactly. What's next?
Then you move on to D, which stands for define.
And in this step, you're defining the ethical standards that are relevant to the situation.
Okay.
So you're thinking about your professional code of ethics,
Yeah.
any laws or regulations that apply,
Okay.
and just the ethical principles that guide your work.
Okay, so you're gathering all the information.
Exactly.
That's relevant.
Yep.
Okay, what's next?
And then comes the E,
E, okay.
which is what the question is asking about.
Okay, so what is it?
So E stands for evaluate.
Evaluate, okay.
And in this step, you're carefully considering all the possible courses of action and their potential consequences.
Okay.
So you're weighing the pros and cons of each option.
Thinking about the impact it's going to have.
Exactly.
Okay. And then what?
So after you've evaluated all your options, you move on to A, which is act.
Act. Okay.
And this is where you choose the best course of action based on your evaluation.
Based on all the information you've gathered.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the last step is L, which stands for look back.
Okay.
And this is all about reflecting on the outcome of your decision.
Yeah.
What went well?
Right.
What could you have done differently?
Okay.
What did you learn from this experience?
So it's like turning every ethical decision into a learning experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So to recap, question 18 asks, what does the E stand for in the ethical decision-making model known as IDEAL?
Right.
And what's the answer?
The answer is evaluate.
Evaluate, that's right.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's do a couple more.
Right.
Number 19. This one's all about multicultural counseling.
Okay.
And it says, in multicultural counseling, which term refers to the belief that one's own culture is superior to others?
Okay.
And the options are acculturation, ethnocentrism, assimilation, cultural humility.
All right.
So let's start with acculturation.
So acculturation is the process of adapting to a new culture while still holding on to your own cultural identity. So it's about finding that balance between integrating into the new culture and maintaining your own traditions and values.
Okay, so it's kind of like a blend.
Yeah, it's a two-way street.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And then what about ethnocentrism?
So ethnocentrism is the belief that your own culture is superior to all other cultures.
Okay, so that's not really a good thing in counseling.
Not at all, no. It can lead to prejudice.
Right.
Discrimination.
Okay.
A lack of understanding and respect for other cultures.
Right, yeah, so that's definitely something we want to avoid.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about assimilation?
So assimilation is a little different from acculturation.
Okay.
It's more about adopting the dominant culture and kind of letting go of your original culture.
Okay.
So it's more of a one-way street.
Right, so it's like completely absorbing into the dominant culture.
Exactly.
Okay, and then cultural humility.
So cultural humility is an ongoing process of self-reflection and learning about other cultures. It's about recognizing that you don't have all the answers and being open to learning from your clients about their experiences and their perspectives.
Okay, so it's kind of the opposite of ethnocentrism.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so to recap, question 19. In multicultural counseling, which term refers to the belief that one's own culture is superior to others? What do you think?
So the answer is ethnocentrism.
Ethnocentrism, that's right.
Yep, that belief that your way is the only way.
Right.
And everyone else is wrong.
Yeah, okay, all right. Let's do one last question for this module.
Okay, sounds good.
Question 20.
Right.
It says, what is the primary goal of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT?
Okay.
And the options are explore past traumas, modify dysfunctional thoughts and behaviors, establish a strong therapeutic alliance, uncover unconscious conflicts.
All right.
So let's start with explore past traumas.
So while past traumas can definitely be a factor, it's not the main focus of CBT. There are other therapies that are specifically designed to address trauma.
Right, like trauma-focused CBT.
Exactly.
Right.
But general CBT is more focused on the present.
Okay, what about modified dysfunctional thoughts and behaviors?
So that is the core of CBT.
Okay.
It's all about identifying those negative or unhelpful thought patterns and those maladaptive behaviors and then developing strategies to change them.
Right.
So it's about recognizing those patterns and learning new ways of thinking and behaving.
Okay, so it's like retraining your brain in a way.
In a way, yeah.
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 Okay, establish a strong therapeutic alliance. What about that one?
So a strong therapeutic alliance is important for any therapy.
Right.
It's not specific to CBT, but it's definitely essential.
Okay, so not unique to CBT.
Right.
Okay, and then uncover unconscious conflicts.
So that's really the focus of psychoanalysis,
Right.
not CBT.
Okay.
CBT is more focused on those conscious thoughts and behaviors.
Right, so present moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to recap, question 20. What is the primary goal of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT?
Right.
What do you think?
The answer is modify dysfunctional thoughts and behaviors.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really about giving people the tools to change those patterns that are causing them distress.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing how much we've covered already, huh?
I know, right?
It's like all these different theories and techniques and
we're just getting started.
Exactly.
Yeah, so just think how much you'll know by the end of all 20.
I know. I'm excited. It's going to be great.
But before we move on, let's just take a moment to really solidify.
Yeah, good idea.
Like what we learned today.
Okay.
What are some of the things that really stood out to you?
Well, I mean, we started by unpacking those defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
Like denial and projection, sublimation, regression.
Yeah, and those are
fascinating, right?
Yeah, how those unconscious processes are just working in the background.
Right, yeah.
Shaping our thoughts and feelings, and we're not even aware of it.
Yeah, and as future counselors, I feel like that's so important to understand.
Absolutely.
So that we can help our clients understand their own patterns.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about gaining that insight.
Right.
Into yourself and into, the people that you're working with.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then we also talked about all those different therapy approaches.
Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot of ground there.
We did. We talked about Gestalt therapy and that focus on the present moment.
Right, the here and now.
Yeah, which is so different from psychoanalysis, right?
Right, which is all about the past.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's two very different ways of approaching therapy.
Right, and each has its own strengths.
Absolutely.
And then we talked about behavior therapy, which is all about changing those behaviors.
Yeah, it's very action-oriented, very practical.
Right, and it's I feel like that's something that's really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, because it gives you concrete tools that you can use to make changes in your life.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also talked about brain chemistry.
Oh, yeah, the neurotransmitter.
Which is so fascinating.
I know, it's a whole other world.
I know, and it's those tiny little molecules are really influencing how we feel.
It's amazing, right?
It is.
And how they're related to things like depression and anxiety and all that.
Right, and it's the more we understand about that, the better equipped we'll be to help our clients.
Exactly, because we can start to understand why certain medications work or why certain lifestyle changes might be helpful.
Yeah, okay, so we covered a lot with those different therapies.
We did.
And then we talked about family systems theory.
Yeah, which is a whole other level of complexity.
I know, right?
It's it's not just about the individual, it's about the whole system.
Right, it's about those relationships.
Yeah.
And how they're impacting each other.
Yeah, and we talked about triangulation, right?
Yeah, which is
when a child gets pulled into the conflict between the parents.
Yeah, and that can be so damaging.
So damaging. Yeah, it's really important to be aware of that dynamic.
Right. And then we also talked about ethical decision-making.
Yeah, the ideal model.
Right, which is
a great framework for approaching those tough decisions.
Yeah, it's it gives you that step-by-step guide.
Exactly, so you don't feel so lost
when
you're facing a dilemma.
Yeah, and then lastly, we talked about cultural humility.
Which is so important in multicultural counseling.
Yeah, and it's
it's really about approaching those differences with curiosity and respect.
Right, and recognizing that.
And a willingness to learn.
Right, that we all have biases.
Yeah, we all come from our own unique backgrounds.
Yeah.
And we need to be aware of that.
Right, and how that might be impacting
Yeah.
our work with clients.
Exactly.
Okay, so reflecting on everything we talked about today, what is one key takeaway that you hope our listeners walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that understanding these concepts isn't just about passing an exam.
Right.
It's about becoming a better counselor.
Yeah.
It's about having the knowledge and the skills to really help people.
Right. So it's this is really foundational
Exactly.
for your future career.
Yep. It's the groundwork.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I have one final question
Okay.
for our listeners to think about.
All right.
So we talked about how defense mechanisms operate unconsciously.
Right.
So my question for you is,
Okay.
what are some ways that you might be using projection in your own life?
Interesting.
Without even realizing it.
Yeah, that's a good one to ponder.
Yeah, it's it's a good way to do some self-reflection.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's easy to see it in other people, right?
Right.
But it's harder to see it in ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well that wraps up Module 2.
Module 2 down.
I feel like we...
On to the next.
Yeah, I feel like we learned a lot today.
I did.
So are you ready for Module 3?
I am. Bring it on.
All right, so in Module 3, we're going to be talking all about group dynamics.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about assessments.
All right.
And some really key legal and ethical considerations.
Ooh, sounds important.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So it's going to be another jam-packed module.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so until then...
Happy studying.
Yeah, keep those brains buzzing.
See you, Module 3. 2 modules down already.
I know, right? Feels like we're making good progress.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Right, 18 more modules to go.
18 more modules to go.
18 more modules packed with NCE goodness, all curated by AI.
It's amazing.
To make sure you are totally prepped for that exam.
Yeah, feeling more confident already.
Me too, me too. So until next time.
Until next time.
Happy studying.
Keep learning.
And we'll see you for Module 3.
See you there.
1, 2, 3.
Nice to be in orbit.